Sometimes, the scariest thing is not a break-in by a stranger, but by the very people who are supposed to love you. My name is Emily Carter. I am 32 years old, a financial lawyer living in Denver, and I thought my life was predictable. Courtrooms, client calls, dinners with my husband Mark, safe, normal. But that illusion ended the evening I unlocked my front door and stepped into what looked like someone else's house. The smell of takeout hung in the air. Cardboard boxes were stacked chest-high down the hallway. My favorite rug was rolled up and leaning against the wall, and sitting on the couch, in stretched leggings and an oversized maternity shirt, was my sister-in-law, Rachel, 7 months pregnant, remote in hand, as if she had always belonged there. She looked up at me with a little wave. "Oh, good. You're home." My mind blanked. For a second, I honestly thought I had walked into the wrong house. Except every photo on the wall was mine. Every piece of furniture, something Mark and I had picked out together. Yet the order, the warmth, the quiet pride of our home was gone, replaced by chaos and someone else's claim. Before I could even form words, I heard a voice from the kitchen. "Don't overreact, Em. This is for the best." My father, Robert Carter, stepped out carrying a hammer. He had been halfway through hanging blackout curtains over my living room windows. My stomach dropped. Robert, my own father. The man who had once sworn that the only time he'd ever use the emergency key we gave him would be for, well, an emergency, a fire, a burst pipe, something catastrophic. Not this. I forced my voice to stay steady. "What exactly is going on here?" Rachel shifted on the couch, placing a hand dramatically on her belly. "Brian walked out on me. I can't be alone right now. Your dad said I could stay until after the baby comes." I froze at her words. Until after the baby comes. That was not a weekend. That was months. Months of my house, my sanctuary, being turned into someone else's nursery. I looked at my father, expecting him to back me up, to reassure me this was just temporary. Instead, he crossed his arms, face set in stubborn lines I recognized from every childhood argument. "Family helps family. Rachel needs stability. You'll thank me later for stepping in." My pulse pounded in my ears. "You used the key? Without asking me? You moved someone into my home while I was at work?" He didn't even blink. "Yes, and it's the right thing to do." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. This house was not just walls and furniture. It was 6 years of saving. Late nights of overtime. Years of Mark and me dreaming about a place of our own. And in one afternoon, my father and sister-in-law had conspired to strip me of control over it. Rachel gave me a soft, condescending smile. "Don't worry, Emily. We moved your coffee table against the wall to make space for the sofa bed. I'll try not to be too much trouble." Her words blurred into background noise. My vision tunneled, anger rising sharp and hot. My father's eyes dared me to object. Rachel's hand patted her stomach like a shield. I felt the floor steady under my feet again. And in a voice so low it startled even me, I asked the only question that mattered. "Who gave you permission to do this?" And the silence that followed told me the answer I had been dreading all along. Have you ever had your own family take something sacred from you? Your privacy, your space, and then tell you it was for your own good? If you've ever felt that sting, then you already know exactly where my story is going. I stood frozen in my living room, the walls closing in. Rachel lounged on the sofa bed like she was the rightful owner, and my father Robert hovered nearby, hammer still in hand, like some handyman knight coming to the rescue of the wrong damsel. Only I wasn't being rescued. I was being erased. The words, "family helps family," echoed in my head, sharp as broken glass. I had heard them before, more times than I cared to count. Robert loved to wield those words as a weapon whenever I pushed back on his intrusions, like the time he replaced the chandelier in our old apartment without asking, or when he brought half his poker buddies to watch a game in my living room, only texting me 30 minutes before kickoff. Family helps family. Always the same refrain. As if my role was to surrender because blood demanded it. And Rachel. My God, Rachel. The history between us was a long ledger of entitlement. She changed the flowers at my wedding because she thought her choices were better. She borrowed my car without asking, returned it with the tank empty and coffee spilled down the passenger seat, then laughed when I confronted her. That's what family is for, she'd said, smiling like she was doing me a favor. And now she had escalated from borrowing cars to moving into my entire home. I clenched my fists, forcing my voice into calm, even though my insides were boiling. This isn't going to work. Rachel, you need to pack up your things and go back to your house. Dad, you need to hand over that key. Rachel's lower lip trembled. She was good. I'll give her that. A performance actress with a flair for timing. You want me, 7 months pregnant, to be alone in a house my husband just walked out of? Her voice cracked, and her hand rested protectively on her stomach. Do you want me to lose this baby because of stress? Robert's face hardened. Emily, you're being selfish. Mark already agreed she could stay here. You should be supporting him, not undermining him. The words punched the air out of my lungs. Mark said what? Rachel sniffled, nodding. He told me over the phone that I could come if I needed to. He said you'd understand. For a second, the room tilted. Mark was in Seattle for work. He hadn't mentioned anything about agreeing to this. And yet, here Rachel sat, planted in my living room like a queen on her throne, invoking his name as permission. I pulled out my phone and dialed him immediately, straight to voicemail. Again, I tried a second time, pacing the hall. Still nothing. When I returned, Rachel's smile was just a shade too triumphant. Robert stood taller, as if bolstered by her claim. See? He said. This isn't just me. Mark wanted this too. My chest tightened. A part of me wanted to believe it wasn't true, that Rachel was twisting his words. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was already growing like poison ivy. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife deeper, Rachel leaned back, exhaling dramatically. You might as well get used to it, Emily. I'm not going anywhere. At that moment, my phone buzzed. A voicemail notification from Mark, and I could already feel my hands shaking before I even pressed play. The voicemail from Mark sat heavy on my phone screen, but I couldn't bring myself to press play. Not yet. Not while Rachel and my father were standing there, staring at me like I was the intruder in my own home. My pulse hammered in my ears. My chest felt tight. I had to get control of this before it spun completely out of reach. I squared my shoulders and forced my voice steady. This ends now. Rachel, pack up your things. Dad, hand over the emergency key. Both of you need to leave. Rachel's eyes filled with tears instantly, her hands cradling her belly like a shield. I knew you'd be like this. Cold, heartless. Mark warned me you might react badly. He told me to just give you time to calm down. Her words sliced into me. Was Mark really playing both sides? Or was she twisting his words the way she twisted everything else? Robert stepped forward, jaw clenched. Emily, you're not listening. She's family. She has nowhere else to go. A husband who abandoned her. A baby coming any day. This is an emergency. That's why I used the key. That's why I helped. Emergency? My voice cracked. This isn't a fire, Dad. This isn't a burst pipe. This is my home, and you've turned it into a crash pad without asking. His expression hardened. I'm your father. I don't need permission to help family. My knees nearly buckled at the sheer arrogance. The man who taught me about honesty, who used to praise me for standing on my own 2 feet, now looked at me as if my independence was nothing but an inconvenience. I pressed my hands to my temples. Rachel, you have friends. You have your parents. You have your sister across town with a 4-bedroom house. She's too controlling, Rachel snapped, the tears drying up faster than they came. I can't deal with her stress right now. I shook my head. And what about Brian? You're acting like he's disappeared forever. He just needed space. Rachel's lips curled. Space. That's what men always say when they're done with you. Before I could argue, my phone buzzed again. Another call from Mark. I silenced it, needing air more than answers, right then. I retreated upstairs to my bedroom, shutting the door, trying to gather the fragments of my composure. That's when I heard it, muffled voices drifting up the staircase. Rachel's voice. Low, urgent. I crept to the top of the stairs, ears straining. She bought it, Rachel whispered into her phone. She thinks Mark gave me permission. Dad's on my side, of course. It's perfect. By the time she pushes back hard enough, I'll already be settled. Maybe even the nursery set up. My stomach dropped. My fingers dug into the railing until my knuckles turned white. She wasn't a victim. This was deliberate, calculated. She laughed softly. Exactly. She won't dare throw out a pregnant woman. Everyone will see her as a monster if she tries. And Dad, he'll make sure she caves. He always does. The conversation ended, the sound of her phone clicking shut, echoing louder than any slammed door. I stood frozen, heart pounding so hard, I thought it might burst through my chest. The truth was undeniable now. Rachel wasn't stranded. She wasn't abandoned. She was playing me, playing all of us. I stepped back into my bedroom, my reflection staring at me from the mirror across the room. My face looked pale, almost unfamiliar. My voice came out barely a whisper. But it was enough to steady my resolve. This isn't just family drama anymore. This is war. By the time Mark finally called me back that night, I had rehearsed 100 versions of the conversation in my head. In every version, he sided with me. In every version, he told Rachel to leave and demanded my father return the key. But real life is never as clean as the rehearsals we play in our heads. Emily, what's going on? His voice came through the speaker, tense but cautious. I told him everything. The moving truck, the boxes. Rachel sprawled across the couch like it was her throne. Dad hammering blackout curtains into our windows. I didn't hold back the rage, or the betrayal, or the truth I had overheard from Rachel's whispered phone call. There was silence on the other end, then a sigh. This is way more than I imagined. I thought maybe she'd bring a suitcase, stay a couple days at most. Not this. Exactly, I said, pacing the bedroom floor. She isn't stranded. She's scheming. She said so herself, and Dad is helping her. Mark, you have to tell them to leave. He hesitated. She's 7 months pregnant. I can't just throw her out in the middle of all this. I stopped cold, the phone trembling in my hand. Throw her out? This isn't the street, Mark. She has parents, a sister, friends. She has options. She just doesn't want them, because manipulating us is easier. She's fragile right now, he argued. Her husband walked out. No, I cut in, my voice sharp. He didn't. He needed space. That's not the same thing. I could hear his exhale, weary and frayed. Emily, I don't want to make this worse. I closed my eyes, the ache in my chest heavy. Do you realize how alone that makes me feel? My father and your sister violated our home, and you're still talking about their feelings instead of mine. Before he could answer, there was a knock. Then, the bedroom door swung open without waiting for permission. Rachel stood there, belly first, a hand resting on the doorframe as if she were queen of the castle. Mark, she said sweetly, ignoring me completely. I knew you'd understand. I'll stay until the baby's born. After that, we'll see where things stand with Brian. Her tone was casual, like she was discussing weekend plans instead of hijacking my life. Rachel, Mark started, but she raised a hand. No, listen. The nursery at my house isn't finished, and Brian's unstable. You wouldn't want me to risk my health, or the baby's, would you? This place is safe. You're safe. Emily will come around eventually. She has to. I couldn't believe the audacity. My voice cracked through the air like a whip. You're not staying here until the baby comes. That's 2 months. 2 months of you turning my life upside down. Absolutely not. Rachel's eyes filled with practiced tears. See how selfish she is, Mark. I'm carrying your niece or nephew, and she wants me homeless. Mark rubbed his temples, torn between the two women glaring at each other across the room. This isn't helping, he muttered. I stepped closer to Rachel, my voice low but firm. Don't mistake my silence for consent. This is my home, and I will not let you take it. Rachel's tears vanished as quickly as they appeared. Her lips curved into a small, triumphant smile. We'll see about that. The room went silent, the air thick with unspoken threats. I looked at Mark, desperate for him to finally draw a line. But he only looked away, and in that moment, I knew. The real battle hadn't even started yet. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of clattering pans in the kitchen. For a brief, blissful second, I thought it was Mark making breakfast. But when I walked out, the sight that greeted me drained the blood from my face. Rachel stood barefoot at the stove, humming as she scrambled eggs. My best china plates, reserved for holidays, were stacked on the counter. Beside her, her friend Pamela was arranging bowls of fruit and yogurt like they were catering a brunch. Oh, morning. Emily, Rachel chirped when she saw me. We thought we'd get an early start. Pamela's helping me organize my things. I made enough for everyone. Pamela offered a polite smile, clearly uncomfortable, but Rachel was radiant, glowing, like this was her rightful kingdom. This is not your house, I said quietly, my voice trembling. You don't invite people over without asking, and you certainly don't use my china. Rachel rolled her eyes, turning back to the stove. Relax, it's just breakfast. You're so uptight sometimes. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. My sanctuary had been invaded, my boundaries mocked. Every corner of my home was being rewritten to suit Rachel's vision. By lunchtime, my father arrived with more boxes. He barely acknowledged me, carrying a rocking chair through the living room, while Rachel directed him like a general on a battlefield. Dad, we need to talk, I said, pulling him into the hallway. I want my key back. You've abused the trust I gave you. Robert's face was stone. I'm not giving it back, Emily. Not when you're being this unreasonable. Rachel needs me, and you're acting selfish. That key was for emergencies, I snapped. Not for you to move people into my house. His eyes narrowed. This is an emergency. She's pregnant. She's vulnerable. You'll see, I'm right in the end. Something in me cracked. No. What I see is a man who doesn't respect his own daughter, who thinks his word outweighs mine in my own home. He didn't flinch. When I was your age, family didn't need permission. We helped each other without conditions. You've forgotten what it means to be a Carter. I stared at him, stunned by the arrogance. And you've forgotten what it means to be a father? He brushed past me, the rocking chair scraping against the wall. That night, I searched for a file in my office and found something that stopped me cold. A piece of paper in Rachel's handwriting, left carelessly on my desk. At the top, bold letters, baby registry, nursery at Emily's house. The list stretched a page long. Crib, dresser, bassinet, baby monitor, changing table. Nursery at Emily's house. Not a guest room, not temporary, a nursery. A declaration that this wasn't my space anymore. It was hers. I clutched the paper so tightly, it wrinkled in my hands. My vision blurred with rage and disbelief. As if that wasn't enough, when I tried the back door later, my key jammed. I twisted again. Nothing. The lock had been changed. Robert stood smugly in the kitchen. I upgraded your security, he said. You'll get a new key once you stop fighting me. My chest tightened, a mix of fury and fear. My father and sister-in-law had taken my home hostage, and as I stood there, holding that damning paper, I realized this was no longer about inconvenience. It was about survival. The paper with nursery at Emily's house still sat on my desk, like a threat I couldn't erase. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. I had tried reason, compromise, even silence. None of it mattered. They weren't going to stop. They were carving out ownership of my life, one room at a time. The next morning, after Mark left for work and my father went back to his place, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. My hands shook as I dialed the non-emergency police line. I never thought I'd be that person, the one calling the cops on her own family. But it wasn't family anymore. It was trespass. The dispatcher listened, calm and professional, while I explained. My father had used a key without permission to move someone into my house. I had asked them to leave multiple times. They refused. He had even changed one of my locks. "Do you have proof of ownership?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. "The deed is in my name and my husband's. Then this falls under trespassing. We can send officers to help remove them. Would you like us to?" The question echoed. Would I? Did I have a choice? "Yes," I said finally. "Please." By 3:30 that afternoon, 2 officers were walking up my driveway. I met them outside, my heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I handed over my ID and a copy of the deed. They nodded, professional but firm. When we walked inside, Rachel was dozing on the sofa bed, a throw blanket over her swollen stomach. Robert was at the counter, spreading peanut butter on toast like it was his kitchen. They froze when they saw the uniforms. "What's going on?" Robert demanded, stepping forward. The officer's tone was calm. "Sir, the homeowner has asked you to leave the property. You've been told multiple times. Refusal to comply constitutes trespassing." Robert barked a laugh. "Trespassing? I'm her father. This is my daughter. And that's my daughter-in-law. She's pregnant and abandoned. You think you can just throw us out? Family doesn't override property law." The officer replied evenly. "If the homeowner wants you to leave, you leave." Rachel pushed herself upright, her face twisted in outrage. "You can't. I'm 7 months pregnant. I have nowhere to go. Mark said I could stay." "Is Mark your husband?" the second officer asked. "No," I said quickly. "He's mine, and he didn't give her permission to move in today." This was done behind our backs. Robert's eyes flashed. "Emily, this is ridiculous. Don't do this. Put the badge away, officer. We'll sort it out as a family. You've had chances to sort it. the officer said. "This is your last opportunity to leave voluntarily." Robert's jaw clenched. He crossed his arms. "I'm not going anywhere. Arrest me if you have to." The room went still. Then one officer stepped forward, voice low but clear. "Walter Carter, you're under arrest for trespassing and resisting a lawful order." When they pulled out the cuffs, Rachel erupted. She screamed, clutching her belly, staggering toward the sofa. "Stop! You're killing my baby. You're stressing me so much I'll lose him." The officer turned to her. "Ma'am, do you need medical attention?" "No," she snapped, dropping the act for a second. "I just need you to stop arresting Walter." But it was too late. The click of handcuffs echoed through my kitchen. My father, my unshakable, domineering father, was being led out of my house by police officers. He twisted his head to glare at me as they pushed him through the door. His voice thundered down the hall. "You will regret this, Emily. This is not what family does to each other." Rachel's eyes widened, horror mixing with fury. She clutched her phone with shaking hands. "Mark is going to hear about this. Everyone will. They'll all know what you did." I stood frozen in the silence that followed, my hands trembling, my throat raw. I had crossed a line I could never step back from, and I knew nothing about my family or my marriage would ever be the same again. By nightfall, my phone was vibrating off the kitchen counter. Messages poured in, one after another, from numbers saved and unsaved. Some were furious, others dripping with disbelief. All of them had the same theme. "How could you?" My aunt's text was the first I opened. "You had your father arrested for helping his pregnant daughter-in-law? Shame on you, Emily." Then came one from Mark's mother. Rachel called me sobbing. "How could you throw her out? She's carrying your niece. This cruelty will come back to you." Each message was a stone stacked on my chest. They didn't ask for my side. They didn't care about the locks changed without my permission. The nursery plan scribbled in Rachel's handwriting. The fact that my home had been hijacked. No, the story spreading through the family was simple. Emily betrayed her blood. When Mark came home, his face was tight with exhaustion. We didn't speak until we were upstairs. He sat at the edge of the bed, head in his hands. "I can't believe you did it without telling me," he said finally. "Because you wouldn't have let me," I shot back. "You would have begged me to wait, to compromise. And while we waited, they would have sunk in deeper. Mark, they changed our locks. They weren't leaving." His silence was worse than yelling. Finally, he said, "I just need space to think." And that night, he carried a pillow into the guest room. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if protecting my home had cost me my marriage. The walls that once felt safe now felt hollow, like they were holding their breath. The following days were a blur of cold shoulders and accusatory calls. My cousins, my father's friends, even Brian's relatives, everyone seemed to have an opinion, and every opinion painted me as the villain. I tried to focus at work, but my hands shook too much over my keyboard. Finally, I made an appointment with a therapist, desperate for clarity. Dr. Pree. Maxwell listened as I spilled everything. Every insult, every manipulation, every line crossed. "What your father and sister-in-law did wasn't family helping family," she said gently. "It was emotional abuse. They used guilt and fear to control your space. You set boundaries. They ignored them. Calling the police was extreme, yes, but sometimes extreme is the only thing that works." Her words steadied me, but the ache lingered. It was one thing to defend myself in theory. It was another to feel the isolation of being branded a traitor. Then, one evening as I sat curled on the couch, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't expected. Brian. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Emily. His voice was tired, flat. I just heard what happened. Rachel told me you turned her out, that you threatened her, that you and Mark betrayed her. My throat tightened. And you believed her. A pause, then a sigh. Not exactly, because she also told me you begged her to stay. And that doesn't add up. Look, I know my wife. She twists things. She plays the victim. I didn't realize how far she'd gone until now. Relief and bitterness surged together. Brian, she didn't just twist things. She moved into my house behind my back. My father helped her change my locks. She had a whole nursery plan written out. She wasn't abandoned. She was plotting. The line went quiet. Then Brian said something that made me sit up straight, heart pounding. I need to tell you the truth about Rachel. You deserve to know what's really going on. Brian arrived the next day, his face pale, his voice low as he stepped into my living room. Rachel told me you'd betrayed her, but after hearing your side, I believe you. He sat heavily on the edge of a chair, rubbing his temples. She lied to me too. She said you invited her to stay and then changed your mind. That's why I didn't come back right away. She wanted me gone so she could prove she didn't need me. But I never abandoned her. I just needed 2 nights to cool off. The confirmation was a punch and a relief all at once. So all of this was deliberate. He nodded. Rachel's spending spiraled during the pregnancy. When I tried to set limits, she panicked. She thought if she could anchor herself here, with you and your father backing her, she'd be untouchable. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone saw the truth. She turned my father against me. She turned half the family against me. Brian's eyes were tired. She manipulates with tears and guilt. I should have stopped it sooner. I'll take her home. I'll handle her. But I wanted you to know. You weren't crazy. You were right. That night, Rachel packed what remained of her things under Brian's watchful eye. She avoided looking at me. The performance was gone. No tears, no pleading, just silence. And when the door closed behind them, the house exhaled. So did I. The fallout lasted months. Relatives called me heartless, ungrateful, cruel. My father refused to speak to me until finally, 6 months later, he agreed to meet. We sat in a coffee shop, the silence between us heavier than words. He slid the original emergency key across the table. I still think family should help each other, he muttered. But I understand now. It has to be offered, not forced. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was enough to breathe again. Mark and I worked slowly to mend what had cracked. He admitted he'd been so afraid of hurting his sister that he failed to protect me. I thought compromise meant peace, he said one night. But peace built on disrespect isn't peace at all. Over time, we built new boundaries. No spare keys, no uninvited visits, no decisions made without both of us. It wasn't about shutting family out. It was about keeping our foundation solid. When Rachel gave birth, I didn't visit. Mark went alone, brought back photos of a healthy baby boy. Later, at his christening, I stood in the back, polite but distant. Rachel barely acknowledged me, and that was fine. Distance was safer than another war. Looking back now, a year later, I see the fire hidden in that chaos. It burned through illusions I'd carried my whole life. That family meant unconditional access. That sacrifice equaled love. The truth is simpler. Family is not ownership. Family is respect. Love without boundaries is not love. It's control. And I've learned that the hardest thing, sometimes, is standing up not to strangers, but to the people you love most. Because loving them doesn't mean letting them walk all over you.